Hi all, this is Amy Dolan here. Welcome to the second annual Inclusion Fusion. It's so lovely to be with you today. I hope that you are enjoying this conference so far. I definitely am. This is a highlight of my year. I am thrilled to be part of this, put on by the Keys Ministry and PajamaConference.com, both of whom I'm an enormous fan of. So glad to be with you today. Like I said, my name is Amy, and if we've not met before, I'll just tell you something about myself. I am a blogger and children's ministry consultant for lemonlimekids.com. We offer unique, personalized, specialized consulting for children's ministry leaders who work with kids in the church. And also, I am a curriculum writer for the biblical literacy curriculum called What's in the Bible. And also, I direct the project What Matters Now in Children's Ministry. We've done a couple books and are getting ready to launch our first local Chicago conference next year in April. So, got a lot going on, and I love it. I love what I do, and I am so committed to the spiritual formation of children in the church that I get to stay busy doing it every day. I love it. So our topic for today at Inclusion Fusion is the intersection of calling and opportunity. I've been thinking a lot about this lately, about how God places a calling on our life and then helps us to match that calling with an opportunity. So for myself, I definitely feel like my calling in life is clear. God has led me time and time again to be about leadership and development of church leaders. And there are several times in my life where I felt confused or unsure, or I've wanted to explore other opportunities, kind of, have a different calling in life. And it seems like God is pretty consistent with this in my life. He continues to bring me back and say, this is the calling, this is the purpose that I have for you in your life. So I want to talk just a little bit about that today, how we can be mindful of the calling that God has given us, and then we can be obedient in finding the opportunities that match that. And specifically today at Inclusion Fusion, I want to talk to those of you who are volunteers in your special needs or disability ministry in your church. You obviously have been motivated to serve for some reason in that ministry. And today I want to encourage you to consider if that is your calling for life, if that is what God has called you to do and gifted you to do. And then I want to encourage you to strengthen those skills and continue to look for ever-increasing opportunities so that the very special children in your church can be served by your calling and by your gifts. So let's get started. Let's talk about this today. Like I said, I really believe that a calling by God plus a matched opportunity equals a very powerful influence in a children's life, right? When we know what God has called us to do and we match that with an opportunity to live it out, it can be some of the greatest opportunity for growth and formation in a child's life. I mean, imagine volunteers are totally clear on what God has for them and matching that with the exact opportunity, living that out week by week. I mean, couldn't be better, right? That is just sunshine and daffodils in a child's life. I don't know, daffodils? Are those good? Do children love those? I do. That's sunshine and daffodils in my life. Well, like I said, sometimes it can be hard to discover our calling, right? It can be sometimes confusing to understand God's voice in all of this. So I like to encourage leaders to think about their childhood, think about patterns in their life in which they can start to gain clues for what their calling could be. So I'm just going to share a couple stories from my life, and I hope to hear from you. I hope that you'll contact me or share online your own stories from your own life. I'd like this to be a conversation. So the first pattern that I can point back to in my life is when I was a child. I was, late grade school. I was the oldest of 5 siblings, and I loved to play school all the time, right? And having 4 younger siblings is the perfect classroom. So on our days off from school, I would lead a classroom for my siblings. And we do all kinds of crazy things. And my siblings hated that on their day off from school, they were still going to school, right? I mean, that's terrible. What kind of person was I? But I could see even from an early age that I loved kids, and I loved leading kids, and I loved thinking about leadership. Well, when I got to junior high, my sister, who was just 3 years younger than me, decided this school thing was not for her, and she wanted nothing to do with this. So I tried to employ my best leadership skills, and I gave her a promotion. I made her the Xerox lady, right? Remember the Xerox machine? Well, we didn't have a Xerox machine at home, but I knew all good schools had a Xerox machine for all those millions of worksheets. And I made it the Xerox lady where she physically had to handwrite all the worksheets that we needed for class. It was hysterical. But she thought it was a promotion and stayed on my staff while I taught and led my other siblings. And so I could see even from a very early age, I was involved in leadership and teaching and being with children. And then later in life, I can see in college when I enrolled in Bible college, it was like my calling became even more specific. And that's what I really believe is we can look back at patterns that give us hints towards our calling all throughout our life. And then we can see as our calling is being refined and shaped and is becoming even more and more focused. And I love that. And when I was in Bible college, my calling became more refined. So I thought that I wanted to be a teacher, I wanted to be with children, I wanted to be help shaping their learning. And so I enrolled in Bible college in the elementary education major, thinking I would just teach children for the rest of my life. I would teach them geography and math and science and all of these great things, and I would have a very active role in encouraging children. And when I was in college, I started volunteering at my church in children's ministry, and all of a sudden my eyes were open to this idea that you could teach children and help spiritually form children, that was a calling and an important role. And the more I started volunteering, the more I felt like I heard God's voice louder and clearer in my life, that my calling to help shape children had now kind of been refined into shaping children spiritually within the church. And so I could see how God was continuing to call me towards children and was refining that calling specifically for the growth of children within the church. So I just want to stop and pause here for a minute and ask you to reflect for yourself. What are patterns in your life that you see in the past, in your childhood, in your early adulthood, where you can identify times you've had whispers from God, times you've experienced God's calling in your life? And then even further from that, are there specific moments in your life you can point to where you can see God refining your calling, giving definition and greater depth and focus to your calling? I'll just ask you to think about that for a minute. Now, I think once we are able to see patterns of calling in our life and are able to see it refined and are able to understand a real specific purpose for what God would have us to do on this earth, it's then important to match that with opportunity, right? Because a specific purpose for our life without an opportunity to live it out is a little meaningless, right? What is the point of that? And yet, the more church leaders I talk to, the more I can see this is the point of great frustration. So there are plenty of church leaders and volunteers I meet who are very clear on their calling. This is what God would have me to do with my life, and this is specifically how I could serve the kingdom and my community. But then as they either pursue opportunities or can't find opportunities that match, they feel very frustrated. And often I talk to church leaders who say, sure, I would love to influence children in the church, but no one will pay me to do it. There's the volunteer opportunities in my church aren't right. I mean, how do I do this? So I understand that, and I have felt that so many times. This great desire inside to obey God and live out who you're supposed to be without having that opportunity on the other side to really fully live it out. So I just want to tell you a couple more stories from my own life about this, and maybe it will spark some new ideas in you and spark some ideas about how you can specifically take action towards matching your calling with your opportunity. So I had been a children's curriculum writer at a church for several years after college, and I loved it. I thought I was going to do this forever. And what I found was that I had even a deeper calling that I wasn't even aware of, that I wanted to be a leader, and specifically I wanted to lead and influence those who led children. And there weren't opportunities for me to do that at my church, and so I decided that I needed to kind of go outside the walls of the church and experience something different. So I left the church and I went to grad school, and I went to a really specialized grad school, all in child development. And I met all of these fantastic people who were committed to the growth of children in all sorts of ways. They were child care workers and social workers and doctors and therapists and all of these amazing people who had just given their whole lives to the growth of children. And I wanted to be like all of them. It didn't even matter which one or which job. I was just so enthralled by their passion for children. And I realized that what I really wanted to do was be a leader in the community. I wanted to lead others who formed children. And even through this experience, I noticed as I started to seek opportunities just a little bit away from my calling, right? I told you before, God had given me a specific calling for children within the church. When I went to grad school, I started to see others who were serving children, but outside the church. And I thought, yes, that's for me. That's what I want to do. I want to expand my leadership, expand my calling by serving and leading outside the church. And the more I tried to pursue that, the more I noticed that God, it almost felt like God wouldn't allow that I would go after something and he would bring me back. I would go after something outside my calling and he would bring me back. And the opportunities in front of me that were actually amounting to something, like a job or a volunteer or something that I could give a few hours to on the weekend, were all squarely within my calling to lead children and lead adults for the sake of kids' formation in the church. And what I realized during this time was that God's calling on us is specific and unique for us. And the more that we try to stray from that calling, the more that we look for opportunities apart from that calling, my own experience has been the more God will refine us and bring us back. I like to say that my calling is like a bad boyfriend sometimes. I just try to break up with it time and time again. I say like, okay, I did that. Now I'd like to do something else. And God says, not so much. Let's stay together. Let's keep focused on that. And really, in my best moments, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that God keeps me focused and keeps saying, I have created you for a purpose. I'm going to give you opportunities. I need you to walk into those opportunities and serve and lead strong so that you can live out your purpose. And I'm grateful for that. In my not so good moments, I'm angry that God is a bad boyfriend and that he's given me this calling that feels like a bad boyfriend that I can never break up with. I can never walk away with. Just a few days, I want to walk away from it and do something totally, like just reinvent myself and do something totally new and different. And God says, no, I have a purpose for your life and I have a purpose for your calling. And I'm going to give you opportunity. I need you to stay focused. And if you can't stay focused on your own, I'm going to keep you focused myself. So I just want to ask you to reflect for a moment. Has there been a time where you have not been able to find opportunity that matches your calling and you've kind of wandered away from it? Have you felt God's hand? Have you felt his, almost his peace bringing you back? I want you to think about that for just a second. Reflect on a time your calling maybe didn't match an opportunity. Now, here's just a final few words I want to say. If you're unsure of your calling, if you are lacking in confidence of your calling, I just encourage you to do everything you can to start there, to look for clues around you, to notice patterns in your childhood, to ask the people around you who know you best, who can give you clues. Ask your friends, ask your coworkers, ask your family. What do they think you do best? What are times they have seen you come alive? What do they believe the purpose of your life is? And I really strongly believe this. A calling doesn't doesn't always equal a full-time job. A calling is not reserved, I don't believe, for the pastors and this paid staff in our churches. A calling is a unique purpose God places on all of our lives in order to use our lives and our gifts best to serve Him and those around us. So if you're a volunteer in your church, and I really hope that you are, if you're a volunteer or if you're a church leader, I encourage you to figure out your calling. Look for clues around you, ask others about it, figure out your calling, and then do whatever you can to match that calling with opportunity. Now, if you're having trouble matching your calling with opportunity, I ask you to engage in a time of prayer, asking God to do that work for you. And of course, don't be afraid to network, to ask for help, to be vulnerable in saying, I have got this burning calling inside of me. I just can't find the right opportunity in order to live it out. Sometimes you just got to practice. You just kind of got to dabble and experiment a little, try something in your church. One time I tried serving with the toddlers in my church. That's what I wanted to do. I thought, okay, my calling is to serve children in the church. And so I served in the toddler room, and I soon discovered that was a failed experiment. God's unique calling for me is to serve and lead those who lead children in the church. And so by serving in a toddler room, it wasn't exactly the right opportunity for my calling. But you got to experiment to know those things. You got to practice. And so don't be afraid to practice on opportunities in your own church to serve the children there. So I encourage you today, find your calling, refine your calling, get specific, get focused, and then match it with opportunity. And then once you have matched your calling with opportunity, don't even dare stop there. Continue to grow, challenge yourself, learn more, and expand your opportunity so that you can continue to serve God and live out your calling day in and day out. For those many of you who serve the special needs and disability ministries in our churches, thank you so much. And if you've been serving there out of a need, or you've been serving, because just someone asked you to, I ask you just to take a minute to reflect and ask yourself, what is your calling specifically? And hopefully your calling is to serve special needs disability ministry in our churches. Hopefully that's what it is, because we need more of you every single day. And if that is your calling, then I encourage you to be confident and stand tall. Thank God for your calling, and look for continued ways that you can match that with increasing opportunity in your church. If God has given you this calling in your life, you cannot take it for granted. You cannot sit on the sidelines, and you cannot take a pass at serving the children in your church. You must actively engage, and you must look for opportunities. Talk to your children's director, talk to your pastor, talk to parents, talk to anyone you can in your church. You let them know of the calling, the very special calling that God has placed on your life, and you ask them how you can continue to have increased opportunity to serve these very special children in the church. Thank you so much for all you do. I'm eternally grateful, and I hope to see you very soon. Have a very blessed Inclusion Fusion.